Hi, this is Ken Schwartz. I get a lot of calls from people who have some problem, whether it be with a roofer who they gave money to, sometimes some other sort of construction, a car, any sort of thing where they spent some money and signed a contract. All too often I get a phone call and they say, I gave this roofer $1,500. He didn't finish the job. He never even began the job, whatever. I get calls like this all the time for you name it, whatever kind of business deal that person may have entered into. And I say, well, let me see the contract. And I look at the contracts when they even have contracts. And oftentimes the contracts are very one-sided, typically one-sided as to the construction company or whatever the person or company is that the individual is doing business with, and they're not in a very good position legally. And I've always said to people, I see this with house sales a lot, and leases for that matter. I say to people, if you're going to enter into any sort of contract that involves an amount of money greater than what you can afford to have fall out of your pocket on the sidewalk and be able to sort of shake that off, then let a lawyer look at it. I have people, some, will call me and they'll say, hey, I've got this contract, will you look at it? And if it's a brief document that doesn't take a bunch of time, I usually don't charge anything for that. I'm not worried about charging a fee for that. I'd much rather just give that advice and that person be good to go. But if you have something complicated, it's well worth paying myself or paying any lawyer that knows what he or she is doing to take a look at that document, give you some advice on some additions, some changes, some modifications, whatever, to that contract before you sign it. And if you spend $200, $300, $400 on some legal advice with regard to that contract, it beats the heck out of getting into a lawsuit about over thousands of dollars. I'll give you an example. I had a guy mention to me a lease recently in a part of town where I think unfortunately there's a fair amount of car break-ins. So this was an apartment lease, and my first question was, what's the parking arrangement like at this apartment building? And the answer was, it's outside, surface parking, but it's fenced in. Is there a guard there? No, but it's fenced in. Okay. What does that cost? Well, the apartment complex charges a fee. I don't remember what it was, to park on that lot. So I suggested to this person, this was before they signed the lease, ask the landlord, ask the property manager how many cars have been broken into or how often cars have been broken into on the lot. Now you know the answer they're going to give you is either never or very seldom does that happen. And what I suggested was have them put in that agreement, have them put in that lease a clause that says if your car is ever broken into on that parking lot, that you will be relieved from having to pay rent for that parking spot for the rest of the lease term. And the person who I gave this advice to thought that was pretty funny, but my response was, if they don't agree to do that, if they balk at that and they say, well, we really don't have any break-ins, it's really not a problem, then your response is, well, great, then you might as well go ahead and agree to that because you just said it's never really happening, so sign it anyway, right? Put it in there. That's just one example of many. Other times, sometimes you'll enter into a contract and it makes a lot of sense to put some language in there about attorney fees if a dispute arises. Sometimes it makes sense to put a clause in that contract that if a dispute does arise, we'll litigate it right here in St. Louis County. Well, why would we do that? Well, because my office is right across the street from the courthouse. It's directly behind me. It's a lot more affordable to pay an attorney to litigate a case in the county where that lawyer's office sits than to litigate who knows where else. And if it's out of state, you know, chances are I'm going to have to get you a name as best we can of a lawyer out of state, and you're going to spend a fortune, and who knows what kind of result you're going to get. So it makes a lot of sense to have those sorts of provisions in contracts. Contracts are documents that people sign all too often without even reading them, let alone understanding the contents of them. And again, my advice is if it involves a dollar amount that's greater than what you could afford to have fall out of your pocket today, let a lawyer look at it.